And so we went to see the gig, and halfway through, he was playing a song called Reconsider Baby, a Lowell Fulson track. And he said, wait a minute.
Wait a minute, hold it.
We got Led Zeppelin in here tonight. We got to do better than that.
If we could start together, fellas, because we got Led Zeppelin out there, and Jimmy Darren, and a whole bunch of people. And
I was about 9 or something like that, and this voice came across in amongst Pat Boone and Johnny Mathis and all the stuff that was part of the Valium that we still know about today. He got all this stuff, Mystery Train, Little Junior Parker's Blue Flames. I didn't know anything about the references. I didn't know anything about what I know now, where it came from, but I heard that voice. I was so captured by the emotive stuff. I mean, a lot of the very early Elvis Presley stuff, when you flipped the record over, you got some of the most amazing singing. When he was on fire, his voice, he carried all the resonance of black South Tennessee. With Presley mimicking the black voice and bringing a little lift of black music into the mainstream, that was the sort of hors d'oeuvre. And then a little later on, you got all these black American bands who started to permeate.
Yeah. And did Presley influence everybody over there when in the 50s?
I would say so, because he was totally unique. I mean, he took a lot of the sort of elements of the Johnny Ray approach, the kind of sobbing voice and that sort of thing. But he mixed it with the music that he was surrounded by when he was a kid in Memphis, you know.
If you listened to Presley and didn't know anything about him, would you know it was a white voice?
I think on some of the very early songs I wouldn't have known. No.
Wouldn't have known?
No. The stuff which he was taking, the Arthur Crudup music, the That's All Right Mama, Mystery Train, which was Junior Parker's Blue Flames. I mean, the whole deal of Presley was that he was the original Hepcat, you know.
Elvis, I was impressed by the whole rebel.
Viva Las Vegas.
No, this was a little bit before that.
Okay.
And I really liked the Presley stance and mood. And I was living in a society that was pretty constricted and pretty tight, you know.
And what we got on the radio in England, it cut through all the drizzle, and it really gave us something that everybody's heads turned. And our parents, as you can imagine, it's the same thing in America, rejected it wholeheartedly, you know. I mean, there were ports like Liverpool and London where you had merchant seamen landing off boats from the States who bring records, 45s. Yeah. That's why the Beatles were so hip to a lot of the black soul music of the early 60s.
Because it poured into Liverpool.
He was a great-looking guy, and he actually, that physical representation, by the time he got to England, guys would like hit themselves on the head. Bang, what's going on? Who's this human being? It was fantastic in the middle of all that crap. You know, there was one shining star, and then of course you get exposed to, I mean, Bo Diddley the Man and all that stuff. Yeah. And I was just, as you say, in the dark with my radio. And it wasn't about stardom, and I mean, he was not a bad-looking guy, okay, point taken. But the thing is, none of that mattered to a 12-year-old kid. Yeah. You know, what mattered was something was tapping me all the time on the shoulder and saying, where's that coming from, you know?
A lot of rock and roll artists who didn't come across white, clean and neat, you know, the guys who really were rocking, and they were obviously having to be, people were trying to control their power and their youth and their enthusiasm and their recklessness, you know, like Presley, you know. I mean, what happened to Elvis in 5 years was ridiculous, from being a truck driver in 55 to, you know, coming out of the army in 1960. I mean, he'd undergone a complete character change, you know, personality change and everything. But underneath it all, there was still the wild heart.
He'd adopted a kid when he was in the forces in Germany in 1959, some sort of pen pal extremity thing, whatever it was. And this kid was a bit younger than the king himself, and was into Zeppelin. He was involved with the same agents that we had at the time in the 70s, and he wanted to know who this bunch of guys were who was selling tickets quicker than him. And we wanted to know who we were too. And And so he played the Forum in LA, and I'd seen him a couple of times. I was really so in awe of him as a singer. And I loved the way he could send himself up, you know. I mean, when you've been doing, we're one-trick ponies singers generally, and if you can't see the humor in it, and he did.
And we went to see him at the Forum in LA. We were doing a week there, and he was also doing quite a time there. And he wanted to know who this band were who was selling tickets faster than him. And he didn't really have a great deal of perspective on who was doing what, and who Guess Who were, or whoever else was happening at the time.
And so we went to see the gig, and halfway through he was playing a song called Reconsider Baby, a Lowell Fulson track. And somebody messed up in the band on the stage, and he stopped the song, because he was the master of his own. He didn't have to do any fancy stuff, he was just doing it. And he said, wait a minute.
Well, hello there. Wait a minute, hold it.
We got Led Zeppelin in here tonight. We got to do better than that.
If we could start together, fellas, because we got Led Zeppelin out there, and Jimmy Darren, and a whole bunch of people. And
the truth of the matter is, I understand how he could say all that now.
Yeah.
Because an artist will spend a lot of time being so sort of almost tense with delivery. But when you get beyond that, you move through onto the next place. That's why Elvis could say stuff like that. He could just stop the whole thing and say, wait a minute, while all this underwear was being thrown at him. And I mean, so I mopped the tears away, and we got the nod that we were going to meet him afterwards. And we went to the hotel, and they had the entire top floor, no motorbikes or snakes. They just had these trestle tables with a couple of big guys. And they ushered us to a suite down the hall. It was a tacky place. It was great. It was all purples and browns, you know.
He carried that with him, I believe.
Yeah. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. The room was filling up with sort of second-hand Anne Margarets. There was a lot of.
Well, it has to be said. A second-hand Anne Margaret is
nothing
still.
Wrong with that.
It was one of those long suites where a door opens into another door, like Get Smart or whatever it is, just on and on and on. And the whole place was full of Sandra Dee, sort of Stella Stevens kind of, which is perfect for me. A pencil skirt and a beehive, and I've gone from some white stilettos out. Shows your age.
But he had a lot of chicks. So he got something going on, but
So you had that in common with Elvis. A lot of chicks.
Great experience, because we got into his suite, which slowly filled up with people, and the door at the end of the suite kept opening, and a head kept popping around, just to see how this kind of situation was doing. Were there enough people in yet to make the great entrance? Obviously there weren't for a while, so we mumbled and looked around to see if there was anything to steal and stuff. And eventually the door opened when there was just that right capacity. Perhaps the fire chief had been around and decided it was okay. And the king came in,
And then the door opened, and this guy came through the door. I jumped in. Whoa! Look at the way he moves. And I mean, he was just going around chairs like. He was so cool. And I mean, of course, he wasn't supposed to be cool, but he was.
And it was a bit like seeing Princess Margaret at a sort of at the Chelsea Flower Show. For a while, he was sort of. And then he came round to us, and we stood and talked for about an hour and a half, and we had the funniest time. He was so wacky, his sense of humour was great.
And he came over to us, and we stood in a circle for about 2 or 3 hours talking, and people kept coming by from his retinue, from his entourage, thinking that he'd had enough. And he was going, no. And we had a great conversation. And our manager, Led Zeppelin manager Peter Grant, is sort of quite well known as probably as much as John Paul Jones. Big guy, very great presence about him. And Peter was just going past us on the way to taking a seat somewhere in the homage area.
The second circle.
That's right, yeah. And he lost his footing a bit like our friend there, and he 350 pounds of joy ended up on Vernon Presley's lap on And Elvis's dad was really frail, with a white safari top. Well, first of all, he didn't take himself at all seriously. And that was the great thing. So, you know, you would think that when you meet somebody who's such a deity as that, you're going to have to negotiate an ego and all the stuff that I'm used to in the game. Yeah. But he was really interested to meet us because he knew that despite the kind of swagger of Led Zeppelin, the deal was that we were and remain in many respects huge music fans.
Well, what are you guys, what's your music roots? And we all got the same roots, you know. The sort of blues out of Memphis and Mississippi and stuff. And he said, well, you know, do you do a lot of rehearsals? And of course, Led Zeppelin didn't really show up until the gig was almost over before we actually arrived in those days. And so we didn't do many sound checks, but when we did, I used to like to sing in those big arenas his songs because they sounded even bigger.
I collect records by Elvis impersonators, and I've got the entire collection of Raul Donna tracks. And he was a guy out of New York, an Italian, who had some hits in the early 60s. And I asked him how he felt about that, just like people ask me how I feel about guys who sound like me, you know? Except he was the king and I'm not. So I asked him about Raul Donna, and I told him I got all Raul's records. And he said one day he was in New York and this big limousine came down the street in the village, and he turned and Elvis was walking down the street, and he turned and looked in the car, and in the back window it said, "This car belongs to the real Raul Donna," which I thought was great.
When I was a kid, I was strutting around the stage looking like a cockerel, you know, and that's okay, you know, that was all right at the time. It was a bit sort of obvious. But I seem to have done the most obvious thing because everybody else seems to have joined in.
I was such a cliche with Led Zeppelin, like the bare chest and the sort of, oh, baby, 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 squeeze my lemon and all that sort of. Look, where on earth does a guy start who really epitomizes a form of music which has been totally misconstrued, because Led Zeppelin was not a heavy band. It was a very delicate and dynamic arrangement of people, but it was copied by so many people. And really, I was kind of fettered then. And I didn't realize it until now. Well, when you have a reputation or a public that expects just that and that alone, even however much of that changed, you know, within itself. Led Zeppelin moved around a lot. To go on stage with any band, I was immediately seen as he's that rock hero, you know. I mean, we had a great quality control despite the fact that it was pretty messy at times. The amount of ideas that got slung that could have fallen as tidbits all over the place, but we just, you know, got rid of it. It was interesting because the music was written always at sharp times. You know, you'd know when you started to try and do something if it wasn't happening. You have to disband, and that meant not seeing each other for months until everybody was prime again. It was very hard to know when that was going to be. There has to be drama. Otherwise I'd just go home. And yet, if I had a home, there'd be drama. So I don't think I'll go there. It has to be, yeah, it has to be there. There's no point in singing about the weather too often unless it's that classic song that you haven't written.
The great thing about Zepp was that it was it was like a huge sort of incredible one-night stand. You know, it was like everything you could wish for on the first fantastic free date. You know, everything thrown in, every sort of altercation and every lust and every swing and every bit of truth. Then when you start thinking about it, it loses its plot.
The need to be purist or whatever.
Was there a leader among you? Was there first among equals?
Well, Jimmy was in charge with the crafting initially, and with the nous, the understanding, and all that. And Bonzo and I were really just couldn't believe it. He got the extra money for driving the van, and I got some penicillin, and we were feeling pretty good about all that stuff, you know. And going back and telling all those people who kept crossing the road to avoid us that, you know, something was going on. As time went on, we matured a little bit from the middle of England, and we played a different role as things developed.
What makes Jimmy Page and his guitar sound so unique?
What makes Jimmy Page? I've got no idea.
I mean, so many people try to copy him. No one ever gets that feel.
It's a subtle blend, though, my friend. I don't know, it must be the Grecian 2000. I haven't got a clue what it could be. It's, he's just a real unusual man. Well, I mean, here I am bolstering my career and trying to tell young people that it's all right when you're 39. It's not. He's an unusual guy. But he's great, you know, and I mean, maybe it's just the angle that he leans back at. There's something remarkable about what he does. He does charge circumstances with a great deal of electricity, but he plays wonderfully. The thing, and what I like about Jimmy Page is he's the greatest PR man in the world, because I mean, he didn't talk to anybody for 10 years, and you can see him staggering around and going for the Jack Daniels bottle and all that sort of thing. I know the bottle's empty, and I know he's staggering around and winking at the same time, you know. And you get this kind of, oh, will he make it through the year? And really, he's just playing the game. It's a bit like Keith Richards, they're sort of playing it along. Saturday was one of those days where he wasn't playing that game at all. He was very, you know, he was one of the other Jimmy Pages was there. And
Which one was that?
Well, the one who's, are you pleased to see me, or was there a gun in your pocket? It was just, he was glad to see me, you know. And it was very nice and warm, and even Paul smiled. My marriage, in inverted commas, with Jimmy Page, we only slept together once. And I can't remember what happened. My marriage with him was okay, but it was a little strained along the line. Those were kind of very odd, strange days, the Doors once said. And as I guess I come from that time-ish, I found it a little uncomfortable towards the end working. The partnership changed, and the kind of fluctuations of health and efficiency were not always what I wanted.
Do you ever get to sit down with Jimmy and talk to him and say, you know, Jimmy, maybe if you did this or became more 80s or something, or you not intrude on his...
I don't think that's a fair question, because he's very happy doing what he's doing, and he's very competent, and he plays great guitar, and he does exactly,
I know he does.
He does exactly what he wants to do, you know.
Yeah.
And as long as we can keep our relationship honest and clean, and we can lean on each other now and again, that's all you can ask for, yeah.
That's true.
Working with Jimmy, there were so many kind of areas of sensitivity and tension anyway, because it was such a remarkable thing that we were involved with. Its effect was remarkable, and that in its turn kind of backfired onto us, the kind of purveyors of this kind of whatever it was. So yeah, it's more difficult. It's a shame really, because it would be so nice if he could, or if in these kind of relationships, if the old partnerships could actually transcend into the new. In other words, could George Harrison and Paul McCartney actually work together on the same project with Jeff Lynne? No, that's a kind of odd one really, because they're all doing, well, Paul and George are so far apart. But if you imagine bringing Page into my world, into my musical world, which for all its hiccups is a particularly healthy one, you know? All of us individually have been thinking about what would happen next, because the kind of illusion had run its course. I'd already, as part of my beautiful family, lost my boy. And then you think, I really have to decide what to do, and I applied to become a teacher in the Rudolf Steiner education system, and I was accepted to go to Teachers Training College. This is in 1978, and I was really quite keen to just walk, because as much as it was spectacular, it also wasn't spectacular. And you know, you do change as the days go by, and you have to get harder and tougher, and you know, but you still got this soft underbelly. I had no idea of tragedy or dealing with anything in life which wasn't just moving on. So when something as big and as... there is nothing bigger, really, I don't think, than losing your child. And when that happens, you have to review everything about yourself, about your condition, and about the future for your family. And that was very, it was so sobering that I've never, ever, obviously, been the same ever again from that day on. John had lured me back in, not lured, that's wrong. John had been incredibly supportive to me.
John was basically your best friend, wasn't he?
Well, a lot of the time when we didn't fight. But I think really we came from the same place, from the Black Country in England, and neither of us took prisoners. You know, a spade has always been a spade. Especially between us two, we weren't the same as the other two guys. We came from a different place.
John died when he was 32 after a long drinking session. You've had nearly 40 years more life than him. Do you look back and think, what a waste?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what a shame.
Yeah.
And what a waste. Yeah. So to lose John was, that was the end of any naivety. It was very, very evident that my last connection was severed, really. As far as strong affairs of the heart and the Confederacy and stuff had gone.
On the 4th of December 1980, Led Zeppelin announced that with the death of their drummer John Bonham, the band would split.
It must have been daunting. You've just come out of fronting this band that's risen to, as I say, iconic status. You're launching a solo career,
but it was still there, and I was still part of it all. But these changes come anyway in a life, whatever you do, you know.
Were you scared?
Yeah, I was scared. I was also vulnerable, more than scared, really. And when I was 32 and Led Zeppelin finished, and I was just standing there going, wow, I suppose that's a lot then, you know. Perhaps I better do a bit of dry stone walling or something like that, you know. How about being a steeplejack, you know, or if I like the heights. So I was always sort of wobbling around.
It was a case of do nothing and go to seed, or rethink the whole thing. There was lots of trial and error, and I worked around the clubs in England secretly. Well, I played in a band where my name wasn't mentioned, and it allowed me to get back playing in small places again, to sort of refine my confidence in myself.
What had happened to your confidence?
Well, I was just alone. That was it. I just had to find out exactly whether I had the bottle, the desire, the want, the wish.
So it was very intimidating. I was glad that I'd made the complete break to say goodbye after we lost John. Just get on with something fresh and new. And it was the right time in my life. I was 32 years old, and I needed to know more than just the role that I'd been playing up until that point in time. I needed to experience more of the game.
And I had the choice of either giving up the ghost, actually just saying, that's enough, or realizing that I can sing and that I sing okay, and that it would be futile to stop because circumstances change. There's no reason why I have to suddenly lock my voice away and be considered to be the guy who used to be. I mean, there's something pretty lame about anybody who says, that's it, unless they've got a good reason to do it. I mean, I entered a world which I knew very, very little about. I'd lived pleasantly with Led Zeppelin for years, and when I started off on my own, I realized I had to manage myself, that the times had changed, that I had to become a part of things that I'd very little knowledge about at all. And
also I was excited because I could call all the shots and I could make all the mistakes and all the errors, and you know, and go either way, one way or the other, and just do it. And if you, I mean, there's some fantastic stuff because of its absurdity that I was involved in then, and it was great.
Definitely.
But it was certainly, for me, it was just moving on.
Right.
Farther and farther away from point from when I was 17. Oh, really? Then I was 35, you know, I was gone. I got the musicians together, and I recorded the first album without a record deal or anything at all. I just wanted to see what I could do without committing myself financially or morally to anybody, and to see what might come out of it, and that was one of the tracks from it. It was a kind of hangover from Led Zeppelin, but that first album, emotionally and logically, would be a hangover from Led Zeppelin. The thing is, before, my point of view or my desire was far less relevant then than it is now, you know, because I was only part of something then.
Is it fair to say now, officially, to these people and indeed the nation, that Led Zeppelin will not work together anymore?
No.
They won't.
It's not fair to say.
It's not fair.
No, they won't work together again.
Yeah.
It's gone.
Would it be silly or overbearing to say that it was nostalgic in a way, though? Did you feel something?
I don't know. I mean, it ain't time to think about it, really. We just said we'd do it. This is the right reason to do what we did.
Briefly, I'll let you go. Future of Led Zeppelin? I mean, any more shows like this, perhaps?
Yeah. Come. Get out of here.
Now, come on. Would you ever play again with these guys?
Yes.
Any plans in the future to do that? Tonight, as of now?
I'm in Cleveland tomorrow night. I'd like to see you all there. And on Wednesday night, I shall be in Hartford, Connecticut. Then I'm going to Toronto and blah blah.
Consider taking a lot of that old material that you obviously like and make another. No chance.
There's no point. This is far too testing and exciting. What I'm doing now. I wouldn't substitute this or threaten it or damage it by doing anything else.
And when you had Jimmy on the pre-side, he's not doing anything on this album?
No.
On Now Then, he was doing a couple of tracks, he was playing some guitar.
He played solos on Heaven Knows and Talk Cool One, yeah. But the thing is, it was kind of neat to do it, and it was great to play with Jimmy again, and the atmosphere in the studio changed and has never been like it was that day. And I don't think it'll ever be like that again, because his presence and people's anticipation is great. It is the myth. To arrive and to set up and to tune up and to play, and everybody's holding their breath. Well done, Jimmy. You can still do that, you know. Yeah, but I mean, all it did was it gave everybody the talking point of, maybe this is the last meander from Plant before that great wedding. You know, and there's no point in encouraging that as a train of thought for anyone, because this is what it is, this here.
Page said about the DVD, he was being asked about the reunion questions inevitably that pop up every couple of years. I'm not going to go there, but he said, you know, it'll take the three of us to be in a room, all look each other in the eye and feel that vibe. Well, you were all in the same room numerous times at the premieres. No eye contact or...
I could look deep into his eyes, but I don't know what I was looking at, you know. I was looking at a guy who got something else to do in 10 minutes, I guess. It's a very charming thing to say, and I wholeheartedly agree.
What is stopping Led Zeppelin from jumping on stage?
We don't know how good you are on the drums.
Yeah, that's the reason. You never could find anyone who could take John's place on drums?
This band was performance-based and musician-based, and everything came from in the band. And so if there was somebody else on stage but a member of Led Zeppelin, it wouldn't be Led Zeppelin anymore. It's as simple as that.
You know, they say that you don't really like to talk about Led Zeppelin.
Why do you think that people just won't let the whole Zeppelin myth go?
Because you're talking about it too much.
But it's not true. What does it
Of
mean
course,
to
no.
them? I didn't know.
You have to distance yourself. You have to be able to say, but this is what I do, and this is what I want to do, and I don't need that to help me do this. It's an impossible situation, really.
How long did it take you to resolve that?
Well, I don't think I ever will, but I mean, this is as near as I've got. It's taken 9 years, really.
Because I spent so many years denying Led Zeppelin and pretending that that I had this new career from nowhere. Because I wanted to try and create something that was separate to Led Zeppelin, and so consequently I got very pig-headed. I talked myself into this kind of whole philosophy of never having ever heard of the group, and getting very short-tempered about the fact that people would remind me about it.
I'm going to play Led Zeppelin songs occasionally when I feel like it. I'm going to try and avoid being one of those kind of cabaret artists who has to rely upon a big back catalogue. I think I've distanced myself enough from Led Zeppelin now to be able to actually play Led Zeppelin songs without feeling too bad about it. The other material and what songs are of no consequence right now, because I'll just play whatever I want to play. And these guys were coming along and saying, but it was great what you did personally. Your contribution to that group was very important, and you're a fool to keep on denying it. And I said, but I have to give myself the distance to allow my own integrity to take shape.
Short-term generalizations about a career, you never actually get to the real soul of Led Zeppelin, either on, you know, in discussion on the radio or in quick things on the TV, or even sort of straight, quick journalism. Led Zeppelin was a very sensitive and beautiful animal, beast. And I think that I respect it, and I want the whole sort of effigy of Led Zeppelin to maintain its respect through time, rather than keep on using it as a sort of hitch for my career. I sing whatever I want to sing.
You don't need that hitch.
No, so really it's not that I don't want to talk about it, it's just that there's a future as well as a past.
And do you still understand the fascination of a lot of bands and people with Led Zeppelin? Like a lot of obsession with that band?
Yeah, I can understand it, because I didn't understand it. And also, it kind of just a very odd thing, you know, because it's the whole momentum of the thing, it was like not even self-propelling. The thing just was an enigma, really.
To me, it worked when it worked. It just had its lifespan. You know, in that format, in that kind of what's the word? Not projection. The way it was presented in those days was okay, but it's gone somewhere else. I mean, the thing is, success breeds complacency, and bands do, once they've got a theme that works, you can't actually stay with that theme for too long, you know. I didn't do that, Zeppelin didn't do that, but Gabriel got out. He got out for all the right reasons, and he started making records which were very interesting. If you do it too long, you lose the edge, and you aren't really the front man anymore. You're just a marionette, you know. So it's just keeping it vital and actually holding attention.
It's a little bit like a ship with no rudder. It tends to go around a little bit, and then it becomes just a standard pop song, so that the hard rock element, actually the Bon Jovi type of thing, becomes 4 beats to the bar, like that sort of thing, and it becomes, as soon as we can get to the chorus, we get to the chorus. So it's 4 to the bar, 4 to the chorus, 4 to the bank, and that's it. I mean, you don't have to do it with the same people forever. God forbid that you do it until it gets that bloody boring that, you know, you're just doing it for the sake of it and to make sure you get the next Ferrari or whatever it is. I mean, that's why however many million kroner and nubiles are thrust before Jimmy and I. There would be no point in doing that unless it were for probably twice as much. No. Twice as many. And Zeppelin, not only did Zeppelin grow, but the whole capacity for bands to play in really big venues grew.
Yeah.
The Who and the Stones to a degree, you know, and it was growing at the same time as our popularity. The whole thing got bigger and bigger and bigger, and the capacities and the venues changed, and the whole kind of Dick Clark Roadshow phenomena, our performance changed. So it was enormous, and I was a bit intimidated.
You're part of a certain group of musicians who have...
No, I'm not.
All right.
I'm not.
But you're from that time period.
I was born around the same time, but that's the only similarity.
So what do you mean you're not a part of that?
Well, I'm not a part of that middle stream accepted sort of old rock star, whatever it is, you know?
Well, who are they? You mean like Mick Jagger, Pete Townsend?
I'm not saying anything. I'm just not a part of... I'm not in the sort of the club.
Unlike the Stones or the Beatles, we didn't really go out to do the pop trip. But you're right, in the end, we were corporate fodder. There were executives getting fat and buying cocaine on the strength of Led Zeppelin's success. But it was like
an act of chance, if you like.
And
But it wasn't, surely it wasn't corporate rock.
Do you feel it's because the music you're making is more adventurous?
I just feel that I would like to spend my time in very stimulated musical environments. So I'd rather go up to Boston and find the Del Fuegos and spend a week with them. Or spend a week with them not knowing I was around, just to pick their energy up, you know. However, everybody else, there's a Rolling Stone thing coming out next week, and there's an article in it about the kind of continual vision of Led Zeppelin and the repetition in music. And he's the only guy who didn't comment. I mean, the guy from the Cult said, well, you know, there was something real special about them. They were very, very important, blah, blah, blah. And the only thing I'm glad about is that they're not reforming, because we'd be out of a job. And I thought that was great, you know, because they aren't anywhere near as good as Led Zeppelin ever were. But the thing is, Led Zeppelin don't exist, so if there is a hole and they're going to fill it up, at least they're not pretending that it's original.
But for the true believers, the only event of 2007 that mattered was the reforming of Led Zeppelin for a one-off performance. Bonzo's son Jason Bonham took his place on drums.
We just wanted to play and see what it was like and be good once. Because we've been bad so many times in the interim since John passed away. It was time to be good, and we were.
So why did you not take Led Zeppelin on tour?
What you know about Led Zeppelin is, you're interviewing us now, you interview lots of people, they're interesting shows, but you have to be creative and imaginative and move on. And I think the great essence of Led Zeppelin is the creativity and the imagination that develop with each project. And a project is a project. It's not just going back and visiting the past, it's moving forward. And I think that I don't see us being a stadium act or whatever it is, going round and round, making everybody feel great, playing the hits or whatever they are. I hear that as part of a big picture of what we were once capable of. That's the reason we came to America. We played new songs and we did what we did, and we took songs that made the audience go, wait a minute, I'm not sure about that. Do I like that? And 3 years later, they'd say, yeah, I like that. And that whole creative thing is really what musicians, for me, live for. I think, you know, these few days have been fantastic because they kind of, in a way, it's obviously pressure again, but it's a different kind of pressure. The last lot of pressure was like playing like that and having the physicality and the mental capacity to be what we were many, many years ago, and actually have conviction and be on it. And people can take it or leave it, but it was great. It was really good. And then you drift off, and then you get surrounded by this stifling industry that says, why don't you, have you thought about what, but when we spend time on our own bit by bit, we become friends again, decent, and we have an exchange and we go back into character somewhat and a little guarded or whatever it is. And that's how it is with everybody that hasn't been around together for a while. I mean, I haven't seen Paul McCartney hanging out with Ringo Starr lately, but you know, we've got a lot of history and a lot of kinship and stuff like that, and that's something to behold and be proud of.
But it is said that it was you had developed this other interest and that you did not want to do it.
No, I want to do great creative things, and these guys are my buddies. They're my friends. We're soul partners in a big chunk of our creative lives together. And I think that's a wonderful thing to have experienced. And if that can be the kind of melding of just hanging out together long enough to find out if we all know what key we think in, that's great. I mean, but it's ever onward. And John's busy, right. Jimmy's busy, we're all busy, and it's not the be-all and end-all of everything. It's just what we love and what we may love in the future.
The two other guys are both Capricorns, and they keep stum. They don't say a word, but they are quite contained in their own worlds, and they just leave it to me to
To be the bad guy.
Yeah. No, I'm not the bad guy.
Well, you are for all those Led Zeppelin fans who'd love to say, yes, we're reforming.
Oh, fine, yeah. Well, then you need to speak to the Capricorns. Because I've got nothing to do in 2014, you know.
Oh, so it could be back on again, if I can convince the Capricorns.
If you can find them.
But I'm sure you've been offered a great deal of money.
Are you still on about it now?
Yeah.
Oh, what a shame he was doing so well.
Yeah. Okay, good.
The look of disgust that spread across their faces. All right, I'll leave you alone on this issue.